We're down to the final week of the 2020 high school football season as far as the regular season goes. Welcome in, everybody. I'm Alec Etheridge, the managing editor here at the Shelby County Reporter. This is the Shelby County High School Football Show as we get you geared up for the final week of the regular season. And 7 teams have advanced on to the postseason. We cemented the last spots last Friday night. Now we get geared up for that, but we've got one more week of play before we get there, and 4 teams from the county will not be making the postseason. So this is the final Friday night of the year for them, and 2 of those teams playing each other right here at Chelsea High School as the Chelsea Hornets will play host to the Calera Eagles Friday night in our game of the week. So we'll talk extensively about that, the improvements that we've seen from both teams throughout the season despite young rosters, and what you can expect as those 2 take the field here in that county battle to close out the regular season. But 7 total teams making the postseason. It's going to be an exciting stretch as we get geared up for the playoffs. And this week you may see some teams rest some players, but overall some big games still on the slate as we do have 9 total games taking place this Friday night. So an exciting setup as we close out the regular season. The teams that have made the playoffs out of the 2020 season, that's going to be Thompson, Oak Mountain, Pelham, Briarwood, Helena, Shelby County, and Montevallo. And all those teams with big wins down the stretch to kind of help themselves get into the postseason for the most part. And we saw Thompson, obviously, last week in that top 2 battle take down the Hoover Buccaneers to win their 2nd region championship in a row, and they're looking to repeat as state champions. So we'll talk a little bit about them as well at the end of the show in our SCR Stars of the Week segment. The longest list of players that I've ever had, over a page of athletes to talk about and what they were able to accomplish during the final week of region play. So we'll break all of that down. We'll break down all 9 matchups that we have coming up this Friday night as well. We're going to start right here with our game of the week. Simply put, there's nothing more on the line in this matchup than pride for both of these teams as they head in to this county battle on Friday night. And for each team to see what they've done throughout the season, Chelsea early in the year scored 3 points or less in 3 of their first 4 games on the schedule and have really bounced back to show some promise on the offensive side of the football. Sophomore quarterback Hayden Garrison stepped in at times and has played really well. You've also had some other players that have stepped up, and now they've just seemed to be a little bit more cohesive, a little bit more of a team because a lot of those young players have really formed together and gotten those close relationships. Now you're without Collier Blair, your star running back who tore his ACL a few weeks back and has really been the glue that's held everything together the last several years here as a starter since his freshman season. But nonetheless, a lot of guys have gotten some experience. You came into this season with your only experience on the team, Collier Blair at running back, a couple of guys at receiver, and then in the secondary on the defensive side. Everybody else was inexperienced, no starting experience in the front 7 on defense, up front on the offensive line, and we've seen them grow tremendously throughout the year in that aspect. And you look back last week at what they were able to do against Mountain Brook. They end up losing 35-21 to the number 2 team in Class 6A, but they had a 21-14 lead late in the second quarter against the number 2 Spartans. So to see where they started the season and to score 21 points in the first half against a defense that had given up 7 or less to every team outside of number 1 Thompson in 7A, a team that's averaging more than 40 points per game, and Mountain Brook limited them to 31 points. So for the Chelsea Hornets offense to come in to that game against Mountain Brook and put up 21 in the first half, that was remarkable to see with where they started the season there offensively, especially without Blair playing at running back. So just the growth we've seen on that side of the ball for Chelsea. Their defense has been it really has been the bright spot of the team throughout the season, and albeit the last few weeks they've struggled, they've been taking on some of the best teams in the state in the 6A classification. So the defense still a strong suit. The offense has improved drastically here for the Hornets. That gives them a strong shot to end the season on a high note. But then you look at what Calera has done as well. Now, they struggled last week. I don't know what was going on against Benjamin Russell, a game that they arguably could have won, and they ended up losing that one going away 46-20. So not a strong showing there against Benjamin Russell. But ahead of that game, before they took that one on, they competed with Wetumpka the week before, just faltered it a little bit late. And before that, all of their losses this season were by 8 points or less, and they had competed in every game with several close contests. This is a Calera team that's still starting a ton of freshmen, a ton of sophomores on this team. simply because they don't have a lot when it comes to juniors and seniors. They had maybe 2-3 seniors returning as starters this season overall on the team. So not a lot of veteran experience there. You've got a lot of young guys that are growing up. You look at a guy like Tyler Nelson, the sophomore quarterback. There's been a lot of pressure on him this season, and he still performed at different times throughout the season as well. And then you look at guys like Kobe Prentice and on down the list, Chris Cotton, the running back there for Calera, has been a strong suit the entire season. They have the talent there. It's just young and still up and coming right now. Now, this is a Calera team, and I've said it throughout the season, that when you look at them going into next year, going to be a strong contender for a region championship, in my opinion. And they may not get it next year, but they still have a ton coming back the year after that, to where I think by 2 years from now, easily a contender for that title. Next year, I think they're easily a playoff team and possibly a top 2 seed if they continue to show that improvement under head coach Trey Simpson. We've seen it through the first couple of years. Obviously, this is his second full year there. Last year started the job late in the summer, didn't have much time to prepare, and going into this year, there was a growing sense of confidence. Even though you don't have a ton of seniors, you have a lot of young talent. The guys were bulked up. They were doing great work in the weight room, very athletic, very fast, and most importantly, they had guys that could compete on both sides of the ball depth-wise. You didn't have to have everybody playing two ways in 6A football. Now, they were young, and that's what bit them at times this season. A lot of those young guys had to step in for injury reasons and different reasons throughout the season, but they gained that experience, and now that depth's going to pay off in the years to come, and it may pay off right here at Chelsea on Friday night. So going to be fun to see what these two teams do against one another. Obviously have gained some confidence throughout the season, hoping to gain that confidence in this game on Friday night to build into the offseason and work towards something come 2021. Now, you look at this game, we've seen different inconsistencies at times. Obviously, Chelsea's offense has struggled throughout the season at different times, but has gotten better. The defense was the strong suit for the majority of the season, and then has struggled in recent weeks, but against some elite talent. And now they take on a Calera team that has also struggled on both sides of the ball at different times this season, but they've also shown they can put up 41 points against a great team like Pelham this year, and they've competed with some of the best in the 6A classification and almost pulled off a couple of upsets. So you could clearly see the improvement from Calera throughout the season. We'll see if that carries over into this game, if they can shake off last week's loss and pick up some confidence throughout this week, get a little bit healthier. But both of these teams, coming into the season, we didn't know if we were going to have a high school football season this year or not. Both of these teams coming into this matchup have made it through the 2020 season. They've got one more chance to leave it all on the line. I highly doubt that either of these teams don't show up on Friday night. You've got two great head coaches that get the most out of their guys. You're going to see an exciting matchup between two county foes right here on this field behind me. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to go down to the wire. Would not be surprised if either team wins, but no lack of effort on either side. Going to be a lot of fun right here at Chelsea High School. The Oak Mountain Eagles ending the season with 3 straight top 10 teams, and the last 2 weeks obviously were challenging. They took on Thompson and Hewitt-Trussville to end the regular season. 2 weeks ago against number 1 Thompson, last week against number 4 Hewitt-Trussville, and just struggled defensively in both of those games. The offense put up 21 in each contest and really didn't get going throughout either. We looked at that Thompson game. You saw Oak Mountain put some successful drives together, but right before the half, 2 fumbles that were scooped and scored for touchdowns really was the difference in that game. That could have been a 1 or 2 score game at the half, possibly throughout the second half if it weren't for those 2 plays. And then last week, they just struggled from the start, dug themselves in a hole defensively, and the offense didn't get going until a little bit later in the game. So they lose that one 51-21 a week ago. Now they get a Clay Chalkville team, obviously a strong team in the 6A classification. Now that's the benefit for Oak Mountain in this game. You look at what Clay Chalkville's done. They've been successful all of their games this year, and their losses on the season have come against great opponents, but they do have that classification disadvantage going up against 7A Oak Mountain. But this is a Clay team. They've scored 37 or more in 6 of their 7 head-to-head games this season, sitting at 8-1 overall this year, and coming off a 49-20 win against a very solid Huffman team a week ago. So this is a team that's got some confidence rolling right now. They're going to be a strong contender in the postseason. Neither one of these teams with anything to play for on Friday night. Their playoff seeding is set. So you just wonder what you're going to get. Now, for Clay Chalkville, they're taking on an Oak Mountain option attack, and that could be the difference in this game. They haven't had to prepare on a short period of time. This is going to take place on a Thursday night now. You haven't had a chance to prepare for an option team like this season. On a short week of work going up against that's a tall task to ask your defense to be prepared for what they're going to see from Evan Smith and Judah Tate, two guys that can easily rack up 100 yards on the ground. If Evan Smith can find Noah Young in the passing game as well, that could be the difference in this game. Noah Young, a guy that stands at 6'5", 200-plus pounds, can go up and grab the ball. You've got to take some shots against a 6'8 team. You've got to take some shots on the outside with him, especially in one-on-one coverage. With the option attack they run, the safeties are going to sneak up. You're going to have open passing lanes down the field, and this is a game that they have to take advantage of that in. I mean, if they can do that, then they have a strong chance to win this football game. The defense has been impressive at different times throughout the season. The last 2 weeks, you've kind of forgotten about that because they've taken on two of the best offenses in the state. But this is a defense in Oak Mountain that's the best it's been in several years. I think they could get back on the right track this week as well. And Oak Mountain, their offense, like I said, they've scored 35 or more in 5 of 9 games this season. They can keep that up. If they can get to that 30-plus point mark, they're going to be right in this game. I expect it to be a closely contested game. It's not going to be like Thompson or Hewitt-Trussville being a dominant performance simply because of that classification difference. I think these two teams are actually a little bit more evenly matched than you would expect in those games the last couple of weeks. So that could be the difference. If Oak Mountain's defense shows up, plays like they did for the first portion of the season, and Noah Young can get going in the passing game, I think that could be what lifts Oak Mountain to a victory. Going to be difficult. This is a very good Clay Chalkville team, but going to be a battle to the end nonetheless. I'm not sure there's a coach better right now in the state at getting teams to buy in and not quit on the season when they've had a difficult stretch. It's been tough sledding for Spain Park during the middle stretch of their season the last few years, but every year they seem to find that step, that success at the end of the year that just gets them going again. They never do quit on the season, and that's a credit to head coach Sean Rainey for the Spain Park Jaguars. And they've got a chance to close out with two wins in a row to close out this 2020 season, gain some confidence with a very young football team. Now, the defense has been the problem the last few years, still somewhat of a problem this year, but the inconsistencies on the offense have also been an issue at times. I think you're going to see both teams come out and play the most motivated we've seen them since a 51-21 win against Huntsville to open the season week 1 of this high school football season. I think that's going to be key in this matchup. If they can come in building off of last week's thrilling win, last week a 35-34 victory against Tuscaloosa County, they scored with 34 seconds left to be exact. They score on a pass from Bennett Meredith to Cooper Kelly. Drake Tabor hits the extra point to give them the 35-34 win. They trailed by 20 points with about 4 minutes left in the third quarter and came all the way back there to win that football game 35-34. And that's what you've got to build off of. That offense that scored those unanswered points near the end of that game is what they're capable of. We saw it against Thompson. We saw it against Hoover. They lost those games both by 13 points, scored 30-plus points in each of those games because of what they have on the offensive side of the ball. With a little bit better defense, they likely compete and win one of those two games. But to do what they've done offensively at times this year is what you like to see from this Spain Park team, especially when you've got a junior quarterback. You've still got a junior wide receiver in Jalen Ward. You've got a ton of other playmakers out there that are going to be back next year on this offense. You want to see them show it for 2 weeks in a row and close out the season on a high note. And then you also want to see the defense show some improvement, which we saw a little bit at times throughout the year, especially early in the season. They were actually playing some pretty good football, but in the second half of the season, that defense just hasn't been what it's needed to be. They're so young on that side of the ball, and that's been what's been difficult to grasp. Now, this is a Hueytown team that scored 37 or more in four of their 9 games this season, but the defense has also given up 41 or more in 3 of those 9 games. So this is a team also in Hueytown that just hasn't played a ton of football. They've only played 4 head-to-head games so far this season. So that's going to be the interesting aspect to watch in this one. I think with their defense struggling, we've seen Spain Park's offense have success at times. I think you're going to see Bennett Meredith and especially Cooper Kelly in the receiving game, his final game for the Jags. I think they're going to try to have a big night. I think this offense is going to put up a lot of points. I think they're going to go into the offseason with a ton of confidence here with a lot of guys coming back. Easily the biggest game of the week will take place at Helena High School this Friday night. That's going to be when the Huskies host UMS Wright. And this game, the reason it's big for Helena, if they win this contest, they will get the 2 seed out of the region. They'll take on Carver Montgomery at home in the first round of the playoffs a week later. But if they lose this game, they get the 4 seed out of the region, and they will be traveling to none other than Opelika in the first round of the playoffs that next week. So a very big matchup. That's a huge difference. Now, Carver Montgomery's a good football team, and they could very easily beat Helena in the first round of the postseason, but Opelika is a state championship contender every year, and you do not want to have to travel down there in round one. A much better shot against Carver this season in that first round. So a very big game against UMS Wright this Friday night. And this is a UMS Wright team that is in the 5A classification. So Helena does have a classification advantage, but you can throw that out the window. This is a very good football team with 3 losses on the season. All 3 of those losses have come to ranked 5A opponents. You look at their losses so far, they've lost all of them by 7 points or less, and 2 of them have come by 2 points or less, as well as 2 overtime losses. So they've been right in every game, and all of those games against ranked opponents, Mobile Christian, St. Paul's, and Faith Academy. So a very good football team that could be undefeated and arguably the number 1 team in the 5A classification had they been able to sneak out those 3 tightly contested losses on their schedule. Very good football team. Going to be a difficult task for Helena, but what could be the difference in this matchup? Helena has a ton to play for in this football game. UMS Wright, their playoff hope or seeding is set. They know what they're going to be doing in the first round. They may decide to rest a few guys. They may only play some guys for a half, and there's also not as much to play for. For Helena, this is everything. I mean, this is a huge game for them. They're going to want it. It's on their home field, and this is a team, when they're in a game like this, that loves to just control the way that things roll, and this is a physical defense that's gotten better and better as the season's gone along, and an offense that you look at quarterback McGuire Turner, he's gotten better as the season has gone along, and you look at Kobe Hughes at the running back position, has been talented throughout the season, could easily rack up a couple of touchdowns in this game. It's a team that early in the year just had some inconsistency, was getting off to slow starts, especially in their first couple of games. You look at the loss to Chelsea early in the season, and that's what's really biting them right now. They would already have the 2 seed locked up with that win, but they ended up losing that game 27-23 after falling behind big time early in that matchup, came back to almost win that game late in the second half, but just couldn't close it out. And that was the problem early in the season. But you look at what Helena has done recently. They're 5-4 overall this season. They've won 4 of their 6 head-to-head games, with both losses coming by 6 points or less. So this is a team that's also, like UMS Wright, been competing with everybody that they've played so far this season. And then you look at what they've done defensively. Gave up 27 and 28 in those early season losses to begin the year, but the last few games they've given up 14, 13, and 18 in the last 3 in a row. This is a defense that you haven't seen as much of because of that stretch where they had to forfeit 2 in a row and then had a game forfeited against them to not play for 3 consecutive weeks. But this is a defense that's very similar to last year. They lost a lot off of that defense, but they got a couple of key guys back, and they've been making plays down the stretch of this season. It's a very physical football team, wants to punch you in the mouth defensively and also run right at you offensively. I think that's what's going to be key in this game. If they can come out early, set the tone with that physicality, run the ball hard, kind of control the pace of this game, you're going to look at I highly doubt this is going to be a blowout because of the way that Helena plays football. If they can come out and be successful in doing it, it's going to be even stronger of a chance for them to come out victorious on Friday night. A big, big matchup for the Helena Huskies against a very good UMS Wright team. It's also going to be a big night for the Pelham Panthers, who have been arguably the best team in 6A in the county. No arguing about it. They have been the best team in 6A in the county, arguably one of the best teams in the state in the 6A classification this year. Been ranked at number 9 the last couple of weeks in the high school football rankings across the state, and sitting at 8-1 now. This is a team that ended the region play undefeated with their win against Chilton County last week in dominant fashion. Wasn't even close, 41-7 in that win. And obviously a few weeks before that, 2 weeks before that, won the region championship for just the third time in school history and the first time since 2006. So Pelham in the midst of one of their best seasons in school history, and you look at what they can do this Friday. First off, this is a rivalry game. These are two teams that have met the last 6 years in a row. This will mark 7 in a row, and Homewood has won all of those. They have won every single one of them. But this is a game that you look at these two teams, and they love to compete against one another. And a few years ago, 2 seasons in a row, very closely contested games. And you look at what Pelham was able to do in those games, had a chance to win both and ended up losing them. They were heartbreaking losses, and now they're ready for revenge. This is a strong chance for them to close out the regular season on a high note. Not just that, if they can pick up a win in this game, would be the first time in school history that they would have 9 regular season wins. And I know one of those is a forfeit win, but nonetheless, that would be 9 wins in the regular season, a 9-1 record at the close of their 10-game regular season for the first time in school history, and against an opponent that you really, really want to beat going into the postseason. Now, I know both of these teams have their playoff seeding set. Homewood will be the 3 seed out of their region in 6A. Pelham obviously going to be the number 1 seed out of their region. But nonetheless, these are two teams. I don't think anybody is going to sit this one out just because of what is on the line between these two teams. Stronger chance you see Pelham maybe have some guys that play just a half of football because they are the 1 seed and you want to be fresh for a chance at a run toward a state championship. But nonetheless, this is a team that's hungry. It's a team that's determined coming into the season. They had all of these goals laid out for them, and they just continue to accomplish one after another. I think you're going to see Will Langford, Dylan Peterson, Darius Copeland, Gabe Gamble, Walker Lyles, all these guys there offensively for the Pelham Panthers to continue to roll along. This is a Homewood team that has really struggled so far this season. You look at what they've done recently on the offensive side of the football. They've scored 15, 17, 0, and 6 points the last 4 games of the season while giving up 34, 28, and 28. And it's a team that scored 24 or less in every game and 19 or less in all but 1 game. So Homewood just not quite what they usually are on both sides of the ball, but even defensively, that's normally where you're going to see Homewood play their best football of the season or every year, but they just haven't had it on the defensive side this year either. And you look at this Pelham offense, the way that Homewood's played the last few weeks, you have to expect that Pelham's offense is going to capitalize and take advantage with the way that they've played football on that side of the ball so far this season. They've scored 34 or more in every game, and in the last 4 games, defense has also played extremely well. So Pelham defense, that you look at what they've done recently, given up 18 or less in the last 3 games, in the last 16 quarters, a combined 17 points in that span, really dating back to the second half of that Chelsea game. The defense just turned a page and has played really well the last few weeks. I expect that to continue against a struggling Homewood offense. I expect Pelham's offense to also take advantage of a Homewood defense that's just not as up to the level of standard that it usually competes at. So expect Pelham, if they do play the starters for the full game, they're going to have a strong chance to make school history yet again going into the postseason with those 9 wins. It would be the first time they have ever done that. It's been an unbelievable 2020 high school football season for the Briarwood Lions. Second-year head coach Matthew Forrester in their first year back in the 6A classification in several years. And a few years ago when they were there, they really struggled. They were the 3 or 4 seed out of the playoffs both years they were in 6A, moved back down during the next reclassification because they weren't winning a ton of football games. And now you look at what they've done this time around under a second-year head coach in Matthew Forrester. It's been unbelievable to watch this football program. They have now earned the 2 seed out of that region that features Mountain Brook, Homewood, Chelsea, a ton of good area foes here in the Birmingham Metro area, and Briarwood gets the 2 seed. They're right behind number 2 Mountain Brook. Lost that game to the Spartans in a tightly contested game as well. And you look at what they've done so far this season. Last week, a 28-6 win against Homewood. That was a game with a ton on the line. The winner of that one earned the 2 seed going into the postseason, and Briarwood took them down 28-6 with yet again a strong defensive performance. But what impressed me most was the offense and the way that they improved. You've still got a young quarterback in Christopher Vizina, the sophomore quarterback there. He threw for 200-plus yards, a couple of touchdowns, and his favorite target was Nick Dyson, who stepped up and had more than 100 yards receiving and both touchdown catches, and that's what they've got to have. We know Luke Rebels, he's so talented at running back, had another 180-yard running game with a strong performance there for the Lions running the football. But when you look at what they've got in the passing game, it just hasn't quite been what they've needed to take that next step as a football team. And to see that kind of coming along, they've had a few guys step up throughout the season, and now you've got more than one guy stepping up with what we saw from Dyson last week. I expect that to be key moving forward. Now, against Corner this Friday night, it's a homecoming game for the Lions, and I would expect them to roll. This is a 5A Corner team that has struggled this season, sitting at 4-5. Briarwood's defense obviously playing great football this season, giving up 21 or less in every game, and they're giving up 11.7 points per game right now. One of the best defenses in the 6A classification, taking on a Corner team that's just been pretty average so far this season on both sides of the ball. You look at them offensively, scoring 32.9 points per game and giving up 32.9 points per game and only scoring 26.9 points per game. They've given up 33 or more in 5 of their last 6 games. Briarwood's offense finally getting going. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I think they're going to build a big first-half lead, sit some guys in the second half to get some experience going into the postseason, rest some of those starters as well. But this shouldn't be close. Briarwood's defense, the way they've played, should be able to shut down Corner. The offense should continue to roll and rack up some big points early in this game behind those starters that have really grown throughout this season. So I expect Briarwood to come out victorious, gain even more confidence with home field advantage going into that first round of the postseason. For the first time since 2009, the Shelby County Wildcats are headed to the postseason. An unbelievable effort throughout the season came down to their final region game against Jemison, a rivalry matchup, and they left no doubt. They win that one going away. Defense gave up just 6 points in that game, and that's been a big difference for them this year. It's a defense that gave up around 35 points per game a season ago. The offense was what carried them last year and has struggled this year despite returning a ton of talent. They've dealt with some injuries on that side of the ball and really on both sides of the ball, but the defense's commitment to get better this year has been the real key for Shelby County, and it's led to a playoff berth. And now you look at what they did offensively last week with the offense stepping up and playing one of their best games of the season as well. This is a team that's gaining some confidence, is clearly the best it's been in several years, sitting at 6-3 overall. Now they've guaranteed their first 500 finish since that 2009 season as well. So clearly a strong season for the Wildcats. Now they've had some tough sledding at times. I expected them to break the playoff drought, but I also expected them to be one of the top 2 seeds in this region, and they just didn't show up in a couple of games this season, particularly on the offensive side of the football. But that's changed, and now they've earned a spot in the postseason. Defense playing such good football, and it's so great to see that improvement on that side of the ball. And now they get a chance to gain another win going in to the postseason with a game against Talladega this Friday night on the road. And this is a Talladega team sitting at 3-6 overall. One of those 3 wins has been a forfeit win, so only 2 head-to-head victories for Talladega so far this season. The Tigers' offense, though, has gotten going the last 2 games. It's an offense that scored 42 and 66 points the last 2 weeks, but overall they've struggled on that side of the ball. They've scored 27 or less in every other game this season aside from those 2. And defensively, they've given up 28 or more in 5 of their 8 games, and 46, 49, and 29 in the last 3 weeks. So That's going to be key. I think with their defense starting to struggle a little bit later in the season, and their offense has struggled against the best defenses they've played. You've got a Shelby County defense that gained some confidence last week offensively, should be able to put up some points, and the defense has been confident all year, should be able to limit an offense that struggled against those good defenses. I expect Shelby County to continue that momentum boost going into the first round of the playoffs, and they'll need it. They're taking on a very difficult Pike Road team in the opening round of the postseason on the road. So good chance for them to build some confidence. I think they get it in a win against Talladega this Friday. This is easily going to be one of the more exciting games this Friday night. We saw what Montevallo did last week. Fell behind 14-0 with a playoff spot on the line, and they come back to beat Dallas County in that game to not only make the playoffs but pick up the 3 seed out of their region. A big win to close the year. Kyle Cottingham stepped up in a big way with 3 interceptions on the defensive side of the ball. Also helped offensively. We'll talk a little bit more about him in our SCR Stars of the Week segment. But you look at what Montevallo's been able to do so far this season. A team that entered the year with a first-year head coach in Blake Boren. So much of their talent really hadn't played football either before ever or in a couple of years coming into this season. They lost so much talent specifically on the offensive side of the ball. Look at guys like Malik and Inabenet, and then J.J. Evans, Jamarius Carter, Dion Gilliland, and what they had to replace in that talent pool right there on the offensive side. And to be going to the postseason, even as a 3 seed, it's just unbelievable what they've been able to do this season. Now, they did get the help of 2 forfeit wins this year, but they've also, when it counted, they've made some big-time plays to win football games as well. And now they get a chance to gain a ton of confidence going into the postseason because they're taking on an always powerful Maplesville team. It's a 1A football team, but this is a Maplesville team that can beat teams as high as 5, 6A because of what they have there, at least in recent history. Now, they're under a new head coach, second year under their new head coach, but they haven't missed a beat. They're 8-1 so far this season and have been playing great football overall this year. So it's going to be an interesting matchup because Montevallo does have an advantage of 3 classifications, and they've won 3 head-to-head football games in a row, 5 overall this season with the 2 forfeit victories. But all 3 wins have come by 7 points or less, so they've been very clutch throughout the season as well. That's what you expect going into the postseason, going into this game. We've seen them prove that they can pull out tight games. So if this one's tight late, I wouldn't be shocked by a touchdown and a 2-point conversion or whatever they need to be able to pull off an upset victory against a top 5 Maplesville team. They're in the 1A classification. But Maplesville defense, they've given up 21 or less in every game this season and is giving up an average of close to just 14 points per game on that side of the ball. Now, Montevallo's defense has been good at times this year. The offense has been a little bit inconsistent, but you look at Joseph Anderson, a guy that can easily go for over 200 yards any given week. He's done that a couple of times this season, and you look at they just have so much athleticism throughout their roster that they can make some big-time plays any given week of the season. I expect them to have the chance to do that again this week. It's going to be tough against a very good Maplesville football team, especially a team playing such good defense. But at the end of the day, this is a team in Montevallo that's just gained so much experience from where they were to start the season to now, and is a much better football team that could scare some people in the postseason, especially in that first round. I would not be shocked if they found a way to pull off an upset. But nonetheless, this has been a very successful season. They have just about everybody coming back next year, the year after that. This is such a young football team. Montevallo is going to be proud of whatever happens the rest of the way. They've done that uniform proud. They've done their head coach proud. And I know Blake Boren's excited to see what happens in the future with what they've been able to accomplish in year one. The Vincent Yellow Jackets going to miss out on the postseason this year, but nonetheless, this is a team that's continuing to grow each year. And with the way that they started things this year, having to forfeit their first 3 games of the season, including their region opener, which ended up costing them a spot in the postseason, to see them win back-to-back games and compete with some really good football teams this year, you continue to see that growth throughout the year. Now, this week they get a chance to close the season out with a confidence-boosting win going into the offseason, give those guys some faith for something to work toward moving into the 2021 season, and they're going to have some talent back next year. It's a very big football game for them to gain that confidence. You look at a guy like Jamari Lawson's been big for this team throughout the year. He's had to miss the last couple of weeks due to an ejection a couple of weeks ago, but he's going to be back, should be back this week. And this is a Vincent football team that possibly will be the best it's been in a few weeks, with different players kind of stepping in, different things happening throughout this season. Obviously, they've lost 4 straight games, taking on a 1-8 Prattville Christian team, though. And I know Prattville Christian's a 3A team sitting a classification higher, but Vincent should be able to compete in this football game when you look at what Prattville Christian has done. That only win they have this season was a forfeit win, and they have scored 20 or less in every game and 14 or less in all but one game so far this season. Also had the last 2 weeks off due to forfeits, so you just don't know where they're going to be at as a football team coming into this matchup, while they've given up 38 or more in all but 2 of their head-to-head games this season. So Vincent's offense has shown us they can put up points this season. Defense has been a little inconsistent. Prattville Christian's going to score some points in this football game, but with what we've seen from Vincent's offense against teams that have struggled defensively and even against teams that have played really good defense, I expect Vincent's offense to get back on track this week. I think they end the season with a victory. It's now time to hand out some stars in our SCR Stars of the Week segment. And like I said at the top of the show, this is the longest list of athletes that I've ever had, more than a page of names to read off right now. And that's a testament to what these guys were able to do during the final week of region play. A lot stepping up to either win a region championship, finish region play undefeated, get into the postseason. Just so much on the line for so many different teams, seating-wise, and so on. So for them to step up in the biggest game of the season and have arguably their best games of the season, they stepped up in the biggest moment, and they deserve some recognition. We're going to start in 7A, and we always start with the Thompson Warriors and Connor Harrell, who has had a tremendous season and finally faced some adversity last week. He's a kid that, coming into that game as a junior, quarterback there for the Warriors, had thrown for more than 2,500 yards, close to 30 touchdowns, and only 1 interception on the season. Taking on the number 2 team, the number 2 Hoover Buccaneers, he stepped up. He had 2 interceptions early in that game, and you just wondered if he was going off the rails the rest of the night, if they would be able to hang on and win that football game. Well, guess what? He bounced back in a big way. Finished the night 28 of 34, so just 6 incompletions after those 2 interceptions. Really bounced back strong. Had 301 yards and 2 touchdowns passing. So a very impressive bounce back for him. Faced adversity, stared it right in the face, and knocked it down. And he went on to lead the Warriors to a victory as they repeated as region champions. And he'll be key throughout the postseason. He's taken down some of the best teams in the state now. Started with Oxford in his first start of the season. Beat Hewitt-Trussville, beat Hoover. And so he's taken down the monsters of 7A and 6A this year. Expect him to be key for the Warriors in the postseason. A big reason he's had that success, 2 other guys on that offense, Jarrett Crockett and J.B. Mitchell. J.B. Mitchell led all receivers last week, 123 yards on 6 catches with 2 touchdowns for Thompson in that game. So he had both of Harrell's touchdown passes, and Crockett, 19 carries for 115 yards and 3 touchdowns. And those 3 touchdowns were the difference. The last one put the final nail in the coffin in that win, just powered through the Hoover defender to really cement the victory there for the Warriors against Hoover last Friday, 39-23. The Thompson defense also stepped up big time. Several guys to mention, but you got to start with Gavin Shipman. His interception that went about 80 yards as a pick 6 ended up being a huge momentum swing in what was a 3-point game and turned into a 9-point game with his pick 6. So a big-time momentum shift there. Jax Van Zant led the team with 8 tackles. Tony Mitchell with several big pass breakups that a lot of people may not have really even been paying attention to, but a couple in the end zone, some big-time plays from him when it came to breaking up the pass. And then overall, against a Hoover offense, obviously Hoover always going to have some of the best talent in the state. Their offense has been tremendous throughout the season. They were 4 of 12 on third downs and only had 239 yards against that Thompson defense. So overall, a Thompson defense with a tremendous effort in that victory. For the Spain Park Jaguars, a huge comeback victory, and you got to start right off the top with the 2 stars at the very end of that game, Bennett Meredith and Cooper Kelly. The 6-yard touchdown pass with 34 seconds left gives the Jags a 35-34 victory. A very strong showing from the Jaguars in that game to come back, trailed by 20 points late in the third quarter. Meredith finished the night 28-48 with 298 yards and 3 touchdowns passing, including that game winner, while Cooper Kelly finished with 7 receptions for 93 yards and had all 3 of the touchdown catches in that game, including the game winner. Now, Tabor also a big game there for the Jaguars. He had made all 5 of his PAT attempts, including the pressure-packed one in a tie 34-34 game with 34 seconds left. He knocked through the game-winning field goal PAT attempt to give the Jags the 35-34 win. For the Oak Mountain Eagles, a struggling performance against Hewitt-Trussville early in that game, but Evan Smith, like he does every week, finds a way to bounce back. He had a big game offensively for the Eagles, 15 carries, 149 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Tough night passing the ball for him. Didn't throw the ball too much and didn't complete a single ball. That's something that's going to have to get better this week against Clay Chalkville, and obviously in the first round of the playoffs for them to be successful. But nonetheless, strong showing from him on the ground. And Judah Tate, over 100 yards again. He does it every week. Had 110 yards on 20 carries. If those two can go in and both of them have around 150 to 200 yards in this final game against Clay Chalkville, against Austin in the first round of the playoffs, then you're going to see an Oak Mountain team that's going to surprise some people here at the end of the season. The Pelham Panthers, another incredible performance against Chilton County, 41-7 victory as they finish off region play undefeated. And you got to start with Dylan Peterson. He's gone for over 100 yards in seemingly every game this year, and this past week had 152 yards and 2 touchdowns on 9 carries there for the Panthers offense. Defensively, Jamal Miles stepped up, 3 interceptions for the Pelham defense, which has just been playing lights out, and the overall defense deserves some credit. They gave up just 160 yards and just playing incredible football in the last several weeks of the season, dating back to that second half against Chelsea, held them scoreless the rest of the way. And then you look at what they did the next 3 weeks, 18, 12, and 7 points the last 3 weeks of the season, and just getting better and better and more experienced each week. For the Briarwood Lions, we mentioned their big win against Homewood, 28-6, the best the offense has looked against a solid defense this season. You look at what Christopher Vizina was able to do, 15 of 19 for 205 yards and 2 TDs. Most important, no interceptions for him. So that's huge for him moving forward. Still such a young quarterback. To not make mistakes against a very well-coached and good defense is something this Lions team is going to build off of moving forward. And his favorite target, Nick Deason, who had 3 catches in that game for 114 yards and 2 touchdowns. So to have a receiver catch for more than 100 yards at any point this season is going to be big, but getting down the stretch of the season, we've seen a couple of guys do it now, and to have multiple places to look for Vizina, that's going to give him confidence moving forward. That's going to be dangerous because this defense is unbelievable. Gave up just 6 points to Homewood in that dominant effort last week, now giving up 21 or less in every game and giving up a total of 11.7 points per game. An unbelievable effort from Briarwood's defense week in and week out, led by Tyler Wall, Parker Hudson, so many guys, Alistair Harris, so many other guys that have just played such good defense there for Briarwood this season. Pair that with their offense continuing to improve. You look at Luke Rebels, 180 yards on 19 carries with 2 touchdowns this past Friday. He's gone for close to 200 several times this year. The balance on this team is just getting so much better each week. To see what they're able to do on both sides of the ball makes them, in my opinion, a dangerous postseason threat that not many people have their eye on. This is a Briarwood team that's not in the top 10 right now, is going to get a matchup in the first round that they should win. And the way this defense plays, they're going to be in every football game throughout the postseason as well. For the Shelby County Wildcats, Isaac Montgomery stepped up in a big way, several big receptions that helped lead to big touchdowns that were scored by Evan Joyner. Another big performance for Joyner, who's had to replace Raheem Montgomery, who went down with an injury a few weeks ago, had 3 touchdown runs in that 34-6 win for Shelby County against Jemison, and Isaac Montgomery set up a lot of those touchdown runs for Joyner there as the Wildcats do clinch that playoff spot for the first time since 2009. For the Montevallo Bulldogs, another big win there for the Bulldogs as they clinch a playoff spot in their win against Dallas County last week. You look at Kyle Cottingham, he was clearly the star of that game. 3 interceptions on the defensive side of the football. All 3 were huge and kept Dallas County from scoring some touchdowns that could have put that game away, and he also had 50 yards receiving on the offensive side of the football as well. Joseph Anderson, another good night for him. Not his best of the season, but still racked up 87 yards and 2 touchdowns in that win for the Bulldogs. Man, I'm winded after that. That was a lot of guys to name off, but just a testament to all these guys improving throughout the season and saving their best game for one of the most important weeks of the season. Now we'll see how a lot of those guys step up in the postseason in a couple of weeks as well. But a big Friday night coming up this week for them, for a lot of guys that may not get that chance in the postseason to also have a chance to end their regular season on a high note. There are some of them seniors going to be their final night playing high school football. So a big week ahead for a lot of these kids. I expect a big list of SCR stars next week also. That's going to do it for this week's Shelby County High School Football Show. As always, I appreciate all of you for tuning in, and it's hard to believe that we're to the final week of the regular season. Always a sad, very sad week, one of the saddest weeks of the sports season every year. Some teams not going to go past this Friday night, but the growth we've seen from those teams this year, arguably the largest growth I've seen in my 4 years here from a lot of those teams as far as their players really growing together as a team. So going to be fun to see a lot of those guys compete for the last time. A lot of young players gain some experience here during the final week of the regular season, including 2 county opponents who will not make the playoffs this year in Clear and Chelsea. I have high expectations for them in the coming years, and I expect them to show a preview of that right here in our game of the week this Friday night. But the last week of the regular season, then we're on to the postseason. So much excitement ahead as we do gear up for the final stretch of this high school football season. Will we have another state champion this year? Got to feel pretty confident with 7 teams going to the postseason that we'll at least see a couple of strong runs. Excited to see how that unfolds. We'll talk about all that next week. For this week, I'll see you all on Friday night right here from Chelsea High School for the Facebook Live pregame show and all of the great coverage for the final week of the regular season.